If we consider stocks, if you were born in 1970, during your early years and in your 20s, the S&P 500 index had almost increased tenfold, adjusted for inflation. This would have been a magnificent return. However, if you were born in 1950, during your adolescence and 20s, the market, adjusted for inflation, would have remained almost stagnant. Due to the chance divergence in birth years, these two groups of people would have entirely different perspectives on the functioning of the stock market throughout their lives. If you were born in the 1960s in America during your adolescence and 20s, when your foundational understanding of the economy was developing, inflation rates would have tripled by the time you reached your 20s. This implies significant experiences, as you would recall days with long lines at gas stations and challenges in making ends meet with salaries, struggling to stretch until the end of the month. However, if you were born in 1990, the inflation has been so low throughout your life that such a thing probably wouldn't even cross your mind. In November 2009, the overall unemployment rate in the United States was approximately 10%, but among non-high school graduates of African American descent aged 16 to 19, the unemployment rate was 49%. In contrast, among white women over 45 with a college degree, the unemployment rate was 4%. During World War II, the local stock markets of Germany and Japan were devastated as both countries faced bombings. After the war, German farmers were producing only 1,000 calories of food per day for the country's citizens. Comparatively, the U.S. stock market more than doubled between 1941 and the end of 1945, establishing one of the strongest economies for nearly 2 decades. The remainder of these two groups' lives wouldn't be expected to hold the same views on inflation, stock markets, unemployment, or finances in general. No one can anticipate them responding uniformly to the same incentives and motivational factors, expecting them to trust the same sources of advice or to agree on what matters most. And what the best course of action is in the next phase is unrealistic. Their perspectives have been shaped by different worlds. Additionally, the notion that one group's view is extreme may be valid for one individual, but reasonable for another. A few years ago, the New York Times published an article describing working conditions at a state-owned chronic producer, Fox.com. The conditions were generally harsh, and readers rightly empathized. However, a Chinese worker's nephew provided an intriguing perspective in the comments section. He stated that his aunt had worked in what Americans call a sweatshop for a few years. Despite the difficult conditions, long hours, low pay, and poor working conditions, he found it to be a positive development compared to her previous life. Before working in the factories, she was engaged in sex work. Comparing her current situation to her former lifestyle, he preferred his aunt working in the factory, even if it meant being exploited by a capitalist employer for a few dollars. This example highlights how different experiences can lead to vastly different opinions, especially in situations where one side insists on a black and white perspective. People's decisions about money are rationalized based on the information they have at the time and fit into their unique mental model of the world, which is shaped by their specific experiences and context.